Hi everyone, this is Joe Riggio, your host of Socially Joe, where I want to welcome you back again for episode 35, where in this episode I am joined by COLLEEN THAYER from NAMI, which I'm sure we've all probably seen on TV during this whole COVID pandemic thing. NAMI has been a big supporter to help people in this trying times. So I'm glad to have COLLEEN on my show. So let's bring her on my show. So COLLEEN, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I am the executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness affiliate serving Sarasota and Manatee counties. And I have lived in Sarasota County for a long, long time. Grew up here pretty much and worked in the mental health field. I've also worked a lot in advocacy. And when this opportunity came a couple years ago, I jumped on it. It was at a really good time in my life to spend some more time at home with my kids and family. And so I have been with our affiliate and trying to grow it ever since.
Wonderful. I love it. So as I mentioned, I've seen some of the commercials about NAMI on TV, but what is the true mission of NAMI, and how did it start in Manatee and Sarasota counties, and how did you get involved with it?
Sure. So NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It is the nation's largest grassroots advocacy organization for individuals that live with mental illness and their families and caregivers. And it started more than 40 years ago with family members sitting around a kitchen table talking about how to offer and seek out and find support for their loved ones who live with a mental health condition. And so since that time, there are hundreds of affiliates across the country, including about 25 here in Florida. And so there's, NAMI National, there is then state associations, state organizations, so NAMI Florida, and then local affiliates like us. And NAMI Sarasota began in the early 1980s, very similar. Family members that had loved ones that lived with mental illness got together and over time evolved and then incorporated with NAMI in the late 90s. And Manatee County is a similar situation. Manatee had their own NAMI affiliate. And then back in 2018, all of the NAMI affiliates nationwide went through a reaffiliation process. And at that point, it was really an opportunity for some of the affiliates to join together. And so we have been working for the last couple of years to join Sarasota and Manatee together, and did that earlier this year officially. And so we are now NAMI, Sarasota, and Manatee counties and serve both.
That's wonderful. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, like I said, it has affected everyone all over the place. This has had a negative impact on our community in so many ways, but in what ways is it affecting people's attitudes and overall mental health? It has. Even if so mental illness doesn't discriminate. It's 1 in 5 adults live with a mental health condition, and that could be something like anxiety and depression, things that we commonly hear about, to living with a chronic mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, things that are much more in the serious category, but certainly treatable. And so what we've seen during the pandemic is definitely an increase in some of those more common mental health conditions, like I just mentioned, like anxiety, like depression. We're all heightened by changes in the way we live our daily lives, who we can see, who we can't see, leaving our house, work challenges and changes and things that have happened over the course of, now this last 7 months or so, and how how it's impacted us from a mental health perspective. We've seen an increase in calls looking for help, which is good. NAMI, above and beyond, first and foremost, is a support organization. We aren't a provider of mental health treatment. We try to connect people with treatment they might need, but we are a support organization. So we've seen an increase in calls looking for help, and then amongst the folks that work with us and are members of NAMI, and have been, specifically for people who live with a mental health condition, our peers, they can have a heightened sense of isolation. And that can be something that can exacerbate a mental health condition. So, what we've seen is kind of that need for connection and figuring out how to have connection during this time of the pandemic. And it's, I think, on a positive, has heightened awareness overall about the need for mental health treatment and the need for support, and that mental health conditions are just like any other chronic illness. If like diabetes, something that's chronic, a chronic condition that you can treat, mental health conditions are the same way. And so I think there has been an attitude, or maybe a little bit of a shift in attitude about the need for treating mental health conditions like anything else.
So you did mention at one point an increase, but how much of it has an increase that has NAMI seen in the assistance or support due for mental illness struggles like anxiety or depression? If you had to get, say 50% rise or 25% rise?
Yeah, I would say probably, probably at least 25, 30%. I think it's, and that's not just here locally. That's, stuff we've learned through NAMI National and the information that they're sharing with the affiliates around the country, or other support organizations like Mental Health America, that have noticed and are hearing a lot more conversations about the rise, especially, I really shouldn't say especially with younger people, but definitely with younger people, that talk about suicides are up, and just that kind of overall increase in discomfort, or not quite feeling like people would, in quote unquote normal times, but that the pandemic has exacerbated the discomfort that people have about their own mental health. And, whereas some people may not have any issues, or, everybody has bouts of anxiety or bouts of times of sadness and things like that, but that the pandemic and that lack of contact with other people and being home all the time, or losing jobs, or not being able to be in school, has increased anxiety and depression in particular.
Okay. So this is a great question that just makes me think about this a lot, but everyone has days or times when they feel down or sad because, one day you wake up, you thought you were going to have a good day, and then it just happens to you. But how does one know when to seek professional help if it's something more than just, hey, I woke up and I had a bad day? Now, with the pandemic, how do you know when to seek?
Yeah, it's not always easy. It's not always easy to tell the difference between expected behaviors, things that, we might expect, or when there's signs of a mental illness. And there are some, because each illness has its own symptoms. But there are some pretty common signs of mental illness in adolescents and adults. And you hear a lot about if your signs and symptoms continue for more than a couple of weeks, that's always a good indicator that maybe something isn't leveling off or going back to the way it was, and that it might be a time to think about looking for some help. But some of the symptoms or signs can be, feeling excessively sad, extreme mood changes, where you might have uncontrollable highs or feelings of euphoria and then extreme lows, or strong feelings of irritability or anger. And again, things that last for a longer period of time, not, something happened at home and I got really irritable about, I'm more irritable about it, but something that really is prolonged. When you avoiding friends, even in this time of a pandemic where we may not be able to always see people, physically see them, really disconnecting from friends is concerning. Sleeping habits, changes in sleeping habits, very, real low energy, changes in eating habits. And that could go either way, increased hunger or lack of appetite. Overuse of substances is another sign or symptom, alcohol, drugs, things like that. And the inability to carry out your daily activities or handle the daily stress that one might have, which we all have, but things that are prolonged, or thoughts of suicide. Certainly that is a big red flag.
Yes, I totally agree on all those accounts, but it always gets your brain thinking. Mm-hmm. So what types of programs and support does NAMI provide? Sure.
So NAMI is kind of, I like to think of it in a couple lanes. The support group side of things for groups and classes for peers, so people that live with a mental health condition, and then the family support side. And NAMI has multiple signature programs and then affiliates, depending on how they're set up. Some affiliates are all volunteer driven, like both Manatee and Sarasota used to be. And then some are really robust. And I feel like if I could, flip a switch and do every program tomorrow, I would absolutely love to do that. But, I reel myself back in. So we, on the peer side, we have a support group called Connection, and that's one of kind of the biggest programs that NAMI offers. And it's a peer support group for any adult living with a mental illness, and it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. We have that support group that's been running for several years and is really robust. And we do the same on the family side, so we have a family support group. So that would be families and caregivers of adults that live with a mental illness. We also do classes. So education classes are a big thing where we have a family to family class that's for families of individuals that live with mental illness. It's an 8-week class, and it really dives deep into what are